Well, our sermon today, and over these last few weeks, really, our overall theme has been witness. And it's been how we share ourselves, how we share our gifts with one another and with the world. And so we're going to continue in that spirit this morning, and we're going to take a look first at 2 Timothy. Just a few verses here. I'm grateful to God, whom I worship with a clear conscience, as my ancestors did. When I remember you constantly in my prayers, night and day. Recalling your tears, I long to see you so that I may be filled with joy. I'm reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that lived first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure lives in you. For this reason, I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you through the laying on of my hands. For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew what you were supposed to do, but you were afraid to do it? You were afraid to speak up. You were afraid to reach out. And then before you knew it, the opportunity was lost, gone forever. You realized that you gulped down the words that you knew you should say, or maybe you just kept your hands in your pockets. If you haven't been in a situation like that, you should re-examine your life, because I'm sure we've all been in situations like that. My question today is, why are we so unsure? Why are we often cautious, timid, hesitant? Maybe it's sometimes we don't know what to do. Maybe sometimes we're just a little shy. Maybe we just didn't process the situation fast enough, so we never got to it. Sometimes, though, and I think this may be the case more often than not, we don't act, we don't speak, because we don't claim the power that lies within each and every one of us. Because we think, who am I? Who am I to speak into that situation? Who am I to offer a solution? Who am I to confront the racist? Who am I to reach out a helping hand? Who am I to share an encouraging word or act? I struggle with the same thing. I don't have that authority. Who gave me the power to act and speak? If it's any consolation, you know the Bible is full of these kinds of people. People who are full of God's gifts and graces, who are hesitant to use God's power that is instilled in each and every one of us. Think about it. Moses, hemmed and hawed, tried to get out of this. Ask somebody else, he said. My brother would make a fine candidate. Gideon, he demanded miracle after miracle before he would act. Paul needed a total transformation of body, mind, and spirit before he got his act together. And you know, I realized when I was putting this list together, it was all men so far, so I tried to think of a woman in the Bible who wouldn't do what she was supposed to do. It was a little thick to get to it, and I couldn't think of one. In the New Testament, women were constantly the ones who understood, while the men were the thick-headed ones. Maybe you can think of an example, maybe not. Another one, though, is Timothy. We read part of Timothy's story this morning. Tradition has it that Timothy was the Apostle Paul's right-hand man, trusted, confident, co-writer of many of the letters that are still in our gospel today. Traveling companion. He was groomed to lead the church, to take things over after Paul passed on. But what we also read in many of the New Testament letters is that Timothy looks timid. He looks reluctant. He looks shy. He's not ready to be the leader he has been called to be. And yet, as today's scripture shows it, at least from the writer's perspective, Timothy was a person of faith, no doubt inherited from his grandmother Lois and his mother Eunice. He had received the blessing of God and the church through the laying on of hands. And he received training from Paul. So he had been prepared, he had been encouraged, he had been blessed, and yet still, we get the impression he seems to hesitate. What gives? Author Anthony Robinson thinks this. He thinks Timothy just had one more thing to do, and history tells us that he eventually did it. Just one more thing he needed to do. He needed to claim it. He needed to accept that he was one of God's very own, and he needed to be bold with God's gifts that were placed within him. What if we thought about our words and actions like that? Not that they're our words and actions that we can decide to dole out whenever we feel brave enough or have enough energy to do so. What if these gifts, what if this power shouldn't always be a dirty word. Power is important. What if this is power that we've all been given? What if these gifts, and they're all different in each of us, right? It's beautiful. God is a genius for making us this way. What if these gifts aren't ours to sit on? As the scripture says, for God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. Not that that's always easy, but I put together a few examples to encourage us on our way. How about these folks? The First Brethren in Schwarzenau, Germany. They claimed the power that God had placed within them. By all accounts, they were a bunch of sort of nobodies, young adults, no real power in the church, but they felt called. They felt as though they could do no other, so they went down and they baptized one another. They claimed God's power in the act of baptism. What about this? Have any of you been following international news recently? The brutal dictator of the nation of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, was recently deposed. He was recently taken from power. And women were right at the forefront. They claimed their voices. They were right at the center. This is Ala Salam. She's a 22-year-old engineering student, architecture as well. Can you imagine in a conservative Muslim country, in an autocratic nation run by a ruthless dictator, she literally stood up. She claimed the power that was within her, as did many others. Andy, he lent his voice to an entire generation. Power to live, courage to fly. He claimed God's gift and he shared them in story and in song. Camp counselors, you hold tremendous power this summer. Do you realize the power that you have in your hands as you work with young people? You could literally change lives this summer. Claim that power. Use it. This congregation, we, Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, we are rooted in a powerful tradition of heart and hands and action. We claim it boldly. We claim it lovingly. We try to put it into the faith of our children. Remember 2 weeks ago when our graduating seniors stood up here And they shared what they have learned by being part of this congregation, whether it's just been for the last couple of years or a whole life. We have instilled in them a sense of power through God, through the gifts that God has put in each of them uniquely to go out and make a difference in the world. It's changed their lives, and they'll change the lives of other people. We carry on this proud tradition. We have claimed it, and we continue to claim it. 280 disaster relief buckets. 280 disaster relief buckets put together by this congregation. We're claiming it with our hands. Our immigrant support group, we have a trip on June 17 to Washington, D.C. We're going to go down, and we're going to claim the power we have as citizens, as voters, with our senators and with our representatives. You might want to consider joining that trip. Power. Claim it. The Run for Peace is next week. We're claiming it with our feet. We're sending a message to our entire community that peace is the way, and we're supporting good organizations along that way. This past year, we've claimed it with our voice. Coverage in the newspaper comes time and time again for the simple thing. This is the simple thing that we've been doing that has gained attention. We are speaking for the common God-given humanity that lies in every single person. Sisters and brothers who are made in God's image, no matter where they're from, no matter what their documentation looks like, no matter who they choose to love, no matter what their religious background is. Somehow that's newsworthy, and we'll keep speaking that truth. We're claiming it in the countless acts of loving kindness, in word and deed shared by all of you every single day within this body and in the community and beyond. That's powerful, and we're claiming it. We're claiming it with our pocketbooks. Nearly $4 million raised so far to improve this facility for even greater ministry. So we claim it with our resources. We continue, and we will keep claiming it within our denomination and our district. We claim it with our voices. I know that's not nearly all of it, but our hands and our hearts and our voices are powerful. They improve other people's lives. They strengthen who we are as people of faith. Every time we share peace, service, and openness to all. I have a feeling it's not going to stop here. I know it's not going to stop here. But it also makes me wonder, what is next? I'm confident it will be in a spirit of power and love and discipline. And so, friends, I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you through the laying on of hands. For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline. May that be so.